Our next discussion right now is with some industry experts discussing Cloud ERP strategies. So it's a real delight to introduce and welcome here now Abdel Abatouy, the Chief Technology and Information Officer at FCM Travel Asia, and Mandali Khalesi, VP AI Platform and Technology at REN-esas Electronics. Good morning, both gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Can we start by just setting the scene? What for you would you say are the big ticket issues around Cloud ERP? Is it the opportunity to rethink business alignment with business objectives? Is it simple efficiency? Is it both of those and more? What are the big ticket issues as far as you're concerned? Abdel, may I throw the question at you?
Yeah, good morning, team. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, actually, what would be the biggest opportunity that Cloud ERP offers to organizations? I'm going to talk about what I'm really specialized in here in APAC today. So the biggest win, of course, for us in APAC is simply breaking down the silos. We call this the archipelago effect. So think about it. APAC isn't one region, right? 15 different countries, languages, set of rules. So before Cloud ERP, if you look at our system, they were very fragmented. They can't talk to each other. So every country was, in a way, its own island. So the opportunity here came from creating a single unified brand for the business. It means I can look at our operations across Japan, India, Singapore, and instantly, I can see how consolidated, for instance, cash position, regional performance, and help us take better decisions. So the real game change here is really time compression, I would say. What used to take our finance team, for instance, 2 weeks to manually consolidate to reporting, now happens really in hours. So it's really about efficiency and competitive speed here in the market. You know that our competitors are still trying to match, to the spreadsheet where we are making strategic decisions on responding to market shift. So, of course, Cloud ERP lets us operate with the agility of a startup, but with the mindset of a multinational.
Mandali, your big ticket issues?
Yeah, I think. Well, thanks again, Tim, for having me on the conference. For us, I think it's really twofold. One is trying to standardize some of our processes, so kind of touching a little bit on what Abdel was speaking there. The other one is reduction of cost. So I think those are really the two, maybe not particularly sexy, but quite core to, I think, what Cloud ERP is really there to do. So in terms of what our team was trying to do, we had a number of devices that were aligned to access online remotely. So a lot of our customers are trying to build solutions with our hardware. And what we were trying to do is make those accessible remotely. So at the back end, we had this essentially database of different hardware devices that were accessible over the internet. And so being able to virtualize those and standardize the processes in which they are accessed is actually a big value to our customers. So we're a hardware company. So, we'd want our customers to buy our products and then set them up. But in reality, it's not that easy. And setting up a board and making sure all the devices kind of work with all the dependencies is not actually a core competency of the customer. They just want to get to what I call first deploy quickly. So really being able to standardize the processes on our back end to make it accessible to them quickly is the number one ticket. That's the number one thing that I think our customers are looking at. And number two, the additional benefit is to have a reduction in cost. So instead of waiting to purchase and then setting up and maintaining over the life cycle, you can just remote access and it compacts your CapEx, is the amount of time your team needs to develop. So really reduction of cost through this standardization of access for us is I think a big opportunity for I think many companies that maybe are looking to democratize access to their devices remotely as opposed to waiting for the traditional kind of purchasing setup process, which is taking too long.
So Mandali, very much driven by a desire to reimagine your processes to improve matters.
Completely. And in some cases, if I may say, to kind of not remove the old process, but to put it alongside, because what we're seeing is that the time to first deploy is just taking too long for many of our customers. So how can we just accelerate that time to first deploy? In the end, you will still purchase a couple of evaluation boards to do your last minute fine tuning before you implement it in production. But that most of the time spent in trying to figure it out, plugging it in, getting our field engineers to figure it out, getting a technical salesperson to come in and help the customer. All this requires a new process. So I completely agree with you. Rethinking the process is something that Cloud ERP can enable.
And I'd like to ask you both, and Mandali, as you still have the stage, as it were, can I ask you first? That decision to shift maybe from on-prem to cloud, or a part solution, how have you determined that and come to the conclusion that you have for your business?
Well, it was, I think, when we came to the decision to take some of that part and put that online, and for us it was really this pain point that we were trying to address. We were trying to address the time to market, which is too painful and too slow for our key customers, and it's just requiring a lot of internal cost. So how can we then transition? And I think some of the things we did, we're a hardware company, so we're not a cloud company by any means. And so the important thing was, can we bring a couple of core talent that can come on board and kind of create this nucleus, talent nucleus, if you will, to essentially re-enable our other customers, our other engineers, to really get online quickly. So I think really creating that nucleus of talent was number one. Then really leveraging third-party platforms, so we don't build everything ourselves, and I think that's not necessary. That's not core to our value that we're trying to. And again, I think that's might be useful for a lot of the companies in the audience and also in the APAC region to think, like, what is actually core to what you're trying to achieve? Is it core to build an entire cloud infrastructure, like we work with Amazon Web Services, we work with Azure? Is it valuable for us to recreate that? No. So we leverage a lot of that. But is it good for us to create our own device infrastructure that is remote abstracted from the actual setup? Yes, it is. And that is what we created on top of leveraging other places. So I think what's it could be another question, but really making sure that you have the right talent and that you focus your investment on the part that is really going to drive the value for your business, and for the rest, work with partners. And really getting that equation right is often difficult.
Now, I'd certainly like to want to pick up on the people bit in just a second. But Abdel, for you and your company, that decision, all on cloud or all on prem or part, how have you approached that?
No, listen, Jim. What I think is I see three trends, in APAC region, which is really, really different from what's happening in the rest of the world. The first part is here in APAC, we are cloud pragmatic, not really cloud purists. That means if you look at some examples, some companies, for instance, many large companies in Japan, they still prefer keeping their core financial data on premises, first for cultural reason, but also for risk reason. The same happened in the banking industry. So they use cloud for advanced analytics, I'd say, for reporting, intelligent. And I think that's the balance between this hybrid architecture that helps you to manage the risk on-prem, while you still get the benefit of cloud intelligence, where you can scale, you can compute, but without having your data at risk. Compliance, in Asia is a really full, I say this, a full contact sport. APAC is minefield with regulation. Think about India, GST, Thailand, e-tax, Malaysia, invoicing, China, PIPL, Singapore, PDPA. So you need really, really to have your cloud ERP has a compliance orchestrator, where you plug some specific, I say, localized module to work on the nuances, on the country nuances, but ERP handles most of the rule. So, and the third part is really, really, when you look at Asia is also mobile first native region. Look at China, they are mobile first. So you need to adapt also all this aspect of UI UX to adapt this to your either your customers or your staff, so you're able to leverage on that approach. So yeah, hybrid cloud, I would say it's one of the most preferred option that we have.
And I am very interested in the issue that Mandali raised about your people. Have you had to buy in specialists to get that change underway? And how have you used champions to help your colleagues through that transition process? How have you dealt with the people side of that change?
Yeah, well, thanks for raising that, because I think that's one of the key items. I think Abdel brought up, compliance and also like getting the right balance for on-prem. And I think that is so critical. And now it's the people that then implement, those changes. In our case, we're not a cloud company. We're a hardware company, trying to help our customers, get their job done easier. And so for us, it was reskilling part of our workforce was one of the key things that we needed to do. And of course, you can't reskill everyone, but at least in the team that I was managing, we needed to build up a cloud group, and we also needed to build up an AI group in order to be able to support our colleagues and our customers. So once we had done that, we also realized that we were not always at the right level. We weren't speaking the same language. So what do I mean by that? Some of our AI colleagues, they could do AI very well. They could build AI tools to support customers, but they didn't necessarily have the skills to scale that on the cloud. And vice versa, some of our DevOps people who'd started to build the infrastructure for some of the devices and software, they didn't have a background in AI, so they didn't really understand how AI workloads worked, how models could be compressed to kind of fit on the user's devices more with more power performance, etc. And so what we did is we set up a thing called Coder Fridays. So Coder Fridays was essentially a top-down initiative within my organization, where we forced managers to carve out 1 day a week for learning and proof of concepts.
Okay.
And so we did that last year. And so the fact of compressing 5 days into 4 obviously is not very popular, but the benefit of having a space for learning, experimentation, that is mandated by the management. That was a big space for people to learn and to upskill. But you can't just tell people to upskill. We were trying to have this singular understanding across the team that has a good foundational baseline, because these people are the people that are going to help the rest of the organization, and I mean across businesses, to really speak the language of cloud and AI. And so what we did is we put a curriculum together that was an online curriculum internally for our engineers that had a good blend of AI and DevOps. And this was all also online. It was also cloud enabled, because we had a distributed team. So there was not one time zone, there was all the time zones. And so it's something that they could access during their time. They could learn, they could upskill, and then they could experiment based on that. And I think being able to reskill your workforce doesn't just depend on a policy. You also have to create the environment and also some of the content to be able to bring up your team to the level that you expect to be able to play on the field. And so I think that was really very important for us to then be able to reach out to multiple internal teams with the same approach and to help them on the journey to help their customers. So really, I think helping people to reskill within your team is actually going to drive that. But it does require you to restructure the priorities that you have for your team, and to just expect that there will be some time that they will be doing something other than your business goals, because they're building the value for the future.
Just before I ask for your thoughts, Abdel, Mandali, let me just ask one further question to you on that and that process that you've been through. What was the feedback from your people? Were they confident in the new technology that you introduced, and the process for inducting them along the way? Did that work, or what have you learned that you would change?
Yes, I think the learning platform itself. So we partnered with a large online education provider to do that. And so the platform itself, I think, was really set up and worked well across the time zones. I think one of the things that we found once they'd kind of gone through the initial inductions and the initial curriculum was that the courses were not specialized enough for the kind of work that they needed to do. But then that showed me that they'd kind of reached that starting line that I was kind of expecting them to do, but they were requiring more. And so that's kind of when, there's a balance between expecting a third party to provide all the information you need for something that's related to a product versus, giving the baseline from which you can build on. So it's definitely not a silver bullet, but from a management perspective, it allowed us to reach our goal, which was to get everyone on the same starting line in order to get on the field, and then to have the team engineers be frustrated that they don't have those modules that they expect. But then I can push it back to them and say, hey, well, why don't you build something on Confluence, just a couple of pages to kind of capture or encapsulate the stuff that you think should be done? And that is something that we can then use as internal assets for future internal learning. And so, yeah, it wasn't perfect, but I think it got the job done, which was to get us to the starting line.
Abdel, thank you for your patience. So what are your thoughts on that people aspect of it, of bringing them along on that journey and transforming their skills as well?
No, listen, team, I think most of the project fail because we really underestimate the change management piece in here. And I will put this as a first line to talk about today, because the reality is, specifically when you talk about ERP integration or implementation, it's not a technology things. It's not only a finance things. It's a business operation that we're going from hand to hand, from an operation, booking on our specifically systems and invoicing customers. And I have learned that most of the implementation fail because we forget to put people first. So what I have learned that you need to be, in a way, a cultural psychologist to succeed in change management. The technology works, of course, but getting people through this change, for me, is the hardest part. So the cultures are so diverse. A change the strategy, for instance, that could work in Australia, will literally fail in Japan because we don't approach change management in the same area. And this is what makes very complex in our region, is from one country to another country, you shift literally from culture to culture. So how you can succeed in this strategy and in terms of change management? First, I would say start with the simplest word, which is the why. Why are you doing this? For which reason? It's not only a software things. And everyone has to be involved from the leadership team until the last person into the operation to make them understand why we're doing such implementation. The second part is having what I say local champion, people that are going to evangelize. What's the reason? Why are we doing such implementation? Operation efficiency, whatever it is, a cost saving part. But it's very important that people understand from their, I'll say, local language and context. So local peers approval is always more powerful than email coming from the headquarters. And the last one will be measuring and celebrating proficiency. How we track what has been deployed, what are the gain efficiency from there, what's for people. Actually, the reality is what's for people, what they're going to gain through this transformation, and how they're going to be with you. And I say on the bottom line is really change management definitely require cultural intelligence, emotional transparency, and for people to understand what's in for them.
Okay, thank you. We've had a question come in from the watching audience, so thank you for that. And it's a question that comes up again and again and again because it's forever relevant. And the question reads, connecting cloud ERP with older or specialized systems, your legacy systems, we have found it has been tricky. So what's worked in your experience? I think some top tips are being called for. Mandali, may I ask for yours first?
I think maybe Abdel, you can go for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandali. I think connecting cloud ERP to older systems, of course, this, if you don't do it right, your project dies from the beginning. So especially here I'm really referring to APAC because it's a very fragmented region where you have different systems, connectivity, homemade systems to legacy, if you take SAP, Oracle, I'm not saying that they are all, but the integration of all the system, you have to go through this. So my biggest lesson, and if I want to share from my experience, integration, and it's a very, very good question, integration is fundamentally, for me, a data trust issue, not just a technical issue. So you will have no middleware, no magic that can fix a lack of data governance. And you have to follow, and this is the true best practices I can share with, is of course the API-led modularity. You have to build the governance layer of a data exchange by controlling how, when, and by whom data is accessed, enforcing security, compliance, and trust through reusable, well-managed API. The second phase is implementation. Respect the complexities of data trust by gradually introducing integration, allowing governance framework and data quality to evolve and mature each step. So you can help reduce the risk from legacy inconsistencies and gap. And of course, how you continuously monitor and optimize, ensuring that ongoing data integrity and trust by using real-time visibility and adaptive. So you need to detect, of course, what are before it happened in production, what are the data anomalies or breaches before it breaks your operations. So, of course, connecting Cloud ERP to all the systems, for my takeaway here is how you manage to leverage on API integrations.
Mandali, did you shift legacy systems as part of your cloud journey, or was yours a complete reimagining?
Yeah, I think Abdel has definitely more experience in that area. I think we were working more from a kind of an earlier setup was less relevant to us. I think one of the things we did do is we're trying to bring on legacy systems into our new system. So I think it was kind of relevant. So we were bringing some legacy system on chip board databases onto this ERP system, and that was a little bit. And I think I'll just go back to what Abdel was saying about the API layer. I think that's really critical to be able to abstract a lot of the complexity that our customers don't really need to know about. They need to just be able to deploy. But then there is the physical component. One of the things that we did do is consolidation of some of our back-end processes. So I think fragmentation was one of the issues we had. We had multiple different systems, different locations. So the jurisdiction topic that was brought up in terms of compliance is definitely one of them. So allowing ourselves to have consolidation in 2 data centers in the UK for the EMEA region and in Japan for APAC. I think that also helped because now from a maintenance perspective, that was much easier. I think that's one area. I would like to also touch on our ability to improve processes over time. And I think this is also another opportunity. Maybe Tim, you want to ask your next question on, but I think the ability to leverage agentic, i.e. have the system provide some inputs in terms of process improvement is also an emerging area that we can also leverage.
To what extent have you been able to quantify improved profits, improved efficiency, a real tangible business gain from your reimagined ERP cloud solutions?
Okay.
Mandali.
Let me see that. Yeah. Okay. I think for us the key metric was time to first deploy, which I was mentioning earlier. So how long does it take you to procure a board to actually deploying your AI solution on that device and working in a performant way? So for us, time to market was like the main key metric, and it's night and day. It's night and day. So we're talking one of the key metrics that we had for a AI sensor solution. So this is a kind of more simpler AI solution that you would run maybe on a robot in a kind of factory automation scenario, or maybe for motor control to make sure that if the motor spindle alignment is becoming degraded over time, that at some point it will fail and you want to kind of replace the motor spindle before it fails. Typically those kind of solutions with the old system of doing things would take months essentially to set up. Whereas what we're planning to do with this system that we're hoping will be completed sometime early next year, we're hoping that it would take you hours or days to complete that exact same process. So it's a factor of, X times faster for you to be able to get from zero to that first deployment of that first POC. And I think that's really important for people to get experimenting. So I think there's a topic around innovation that we haven't really touched on. How can Cloud ERP help innovation? And you can help innovation by experimenting and by having multiple experiments, scale those experiments in order to get to an optimal solution, as opposed to sequential, runs of tests. And again, I think the cloud can kind of help with that.
And that experimentation facilitated by presumably the new approach you had,
Exactly.
and also presumably very much an ongoing thing for you in your business that you can see adding further value.
Exactly. And so for right now, we're limited. We've limited ourselves to certain device families, certain groups of devices, because those are the ones where we see the most immediate value. But then as those experiments in terms of a system are successful, then we're able to deploy them to more products, and hence we're able to deploy the value to more customers, and hence the revenue impact will then be better over time. So it's definitely an evolution.
Abdel, does that innovation experimentation piece sit with you? And have you found that you have been able to constantly develop and innovate in a way that perhaps you wouldn't have done before?
Tim. So first, the reality is what the business is looking at from an efficiency gains. So Mandali touched about that, but reality is you're looking at three aspects here as a business. If you go to CEO or CFO about such a project of implementing an ERP, whatever it is, cloud or on-prem, you're looking at three aspects. Operational efficiency and productivity. This is how you're going to streamline your operations. How are you going to work, for instance, how are you going to save your reconciliation process, removing this tedious spreadsheet from your systems, and save, of course, countless errors. So this is all about operational efficiency and productivity. The second part, let's be honest, it's cost saving, of course. Before Cloud ERP, you have many ideas of how many vendors you have in your region. So once the system is starting to be live on that part, you can have this reconciliation and see what are the different vendors and how you can make some consolidation there, and of course significant saving. The third one I would say here is more having better visibility for business decision making. So the pattern today was more on how you shift really from a reacting mode to what happened last month to what I say predicting and shaping what will happen the next quarter, the next month. So in APAC, the market are moving very, very fast. And I think adapting to this level of how you provide this visibility to the business, how you adapt to your competitors, and how you continue to innovate on that sense, for me, that's a real competitive advantage.
I think there are two things, and one of them, Mandali, you've touched on, which I think you touched on was cyber. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't touch upon the recent major outages at two of the hyperscalers. I mean, this stuff happens. It's bound to happen. It's happened in the past. It will happen in the future. How do you take that large-scale hit into account when you're designing your systems? How do you work out how to spread your risk?
Yeah, maybe I'll touch on that first, and I'll let Abdel add to that. From our perspective, as I mentioned, we have worked to consolidate our backends to support this new way of doing business for our customers, getting them online quickly. Obviously, we do rely on systems such as Amazon, Azure, and part of our platforms do rely on that. I think it's a business continuity design is and should be part of all our infrastructure design. And so one of the things obviously we've done is we have our multiple data centers now for ourselves. So if the infrastructure goes down more, then we have we have contingencies in plan. I think that's part of contingency planning. The other thing is making sure that we have multi-site failover, not only from a cloud provider perspective, but also from our own internal strategy. So if one site goes down, we should be able to fail over gracefully to another site and provide maybe at a reduced service level. So degrade the service level, but still provide some amount of service until the site goes back up again. And this is not something that, if it happens, it's when it happens. And we've had situations, as you mentioned, we've had situations recently when the service has gone down for one reason or other, but we've been able to gracefully degrade until it's back up online. So I think there's a limit to what you can do if Amazon Web Services goes down globally for days. There's a limitation to what we can do due to that dependency. But I think from a design point of view, you just have to plan scenarios out of that and make sure that your part is flexible to that risk.
Abdel?
And adding on that, Mandali, and I totally agree, the reality is cloud provides you a level of resiliency which difficult to get through on-prem. And this is where, the strategy between on-prem and cloud is very important here. And managing security and compliance in APAC is in a way like playing 3D chess. You have to satisfy, for instance, if you take Singapore, you have to satisfy PDPA, you have to play with China PIPL, India, DPDP, and on the same time, and sometimes these rules and regulation contradict each other. So the reality is how you build geographic data residency when you ensure that sensitive customer stays in the local country, like PIL for Singapore, PIL for India, on this specific area, and how you address the law. So the balance is really having this level of resiliency across all this cloud ecosystem, but still keeping the data sovereignty. And this is where the complexity came from, the Asia region. The second part is, of course, what I call the zero trust access, is how you manage to protect and secure your systems, whether it is cloud or whether it is on-prem, and how you can get a level of whatever SIM or SOC that continuously monitor all this ecosystem, again, whether it is on-prem or cloud. The balance is really how you manage to get your DRP and your BCP certified, tested, and for if you get any of this recent incident, you will be able to, of course, restart your business in the 2 or 4 hours based on your SLA.
Can we, with the minutes we have left, cast our minds forward? It'd be nice to touch upon the trends and the technologies that we might be looking forward to in the next year or 3. And I wonder if the answer to that is simply agentic AI. Abdul, what do you foresee that's going to change your world?
I think we're moving and we're heading into what we call the intelligent ERP era. That means ERP is no longer just a recorder, it's not just a finance system or tech system, but it's more how you're going to leverage on generative AI copilot. Means if you take the example of today, to get kind of financial report, you have to get all these reports and play with them, and the finance team spend hours. Today, you just open a window, tap, I want the last forecast for SCA, and that highlight the biggest risk, and the system is giving you this. And it's really, really productivity on that sense. And I would say the second trend I say is really specifically microservices. The monolithic ERP will break up for sure, and you will need the core engine, surrounded by specialized, what I call really plug and play services, like compliance as a service module that updates automatically. For instance, tax rules. If you look at Malaysia with e-invoicing, Singapore with e-invoicing, Thailand. So how you manage to have this, dynamic updates on all these different modules across your ERP? That's for me track. That's really a key in a way that it takes time to integrate all this module, all this government, regulation. So to keep track on all of that is how you manage this. Really, this module has a service and partner with meaningful vendors to get all of this done. That's a bit my way. So one part is really generative AI copilot to help you and to help your people to get more productive on what they're doing, to have an interface which is more intuitive, to get the result you want in a minute instead of hours. And the second part is really having a monolithic, not having a monolithic approach, but more a microservice approach where you can integrate a module without breaking your own ecosystem.
Mandali, can I ask you to look forward? In your experience, do you think it'll be the continuous innovation within the system you have, which you described so well earlier, or are there emerging trends that you will now switch to?
There are more, and I think the one of the areas that I'd like to highlight is what we call AI ops. So it's using agent. I think Abdel talked about productivity and agenting in productivity. This is a huge trend. I think one of the maybe trends that are not well highlighted is AI ops, which is really automating intelligence for our processes and our interactions. So actually having an agent sitting within your operational system and not just sending notifications, but also giving recommendations about how to improve them and then potentially actually healing them or fixing them itself. So we talk about self-healing operations. One of the examples that we're working on, definitely not done yet, but looking at some of the errors that come through the development process, before it goes into the main line, or issues with our infrastructure, maybe just connectivity issues, very simple things in the back end that could be notifications to the team, but the team has 12 other notifications coming in and they're kind of going through them one by one. Having an agentic capability to actually look at these, start making patterns, start producing code that might be usable by the engineers, start redesigning some of the process and saying, why don't we build this rule and let us take care of it? And then you do the rest. And so over time, having agentic as an operational innovation enabler, that's something that we're looking at. So self-healing operations is one of the topics that we're working on right now. So again, it's the improvement of the operational design itself, and in addition to the productivity that Abdel spoke about.
Yes, understood. So look, we have less than 2 minutes, so 1 minute each, gentlemen. For organisations that are maybe not on as far down the journey as you guys clearly are, what's the big takeaway? What's the big tip? What's the big advice to make sure it's a smooth journey? Mandali, may I ask you to kick off with that?
Of course. We kind of go back to maybe the core of the issue is like, what is the core pain point you're trying to resolve?
Yeah.
And what is the core piece of that is going to be valuable for your business going forward? So for us, building an Amazon Web Services like platform was not valuable for us. We could easily leverage that. Building remote access, a library of devices that were easy to use, that was very core for us. So what is that core part? And then really investing not only in the technology, but in the people. So setting aside sufficient time for your people to reskill in order for them to be able to drive that innovation internally, because they're going to be the champions. And the rest of the organization is going to be wondering what to do. They should be there to pull their friends and their colleagues along with the benefit of the confidence that the management has given them, that they're empowered to learn, experiment, and then translate that for the rest of the organization. So those are really the two things. What's the core pain point, the core value, and then management driving the importance of reskilling in order to drive change.
It's all about the people. Abdel, your wrap-up thoughts on that?
If I could only give one tip to business leaders or deciders who want to go on this Cloud ERP journey, I would say, don't automate your mess, fix your process first. So most of organizations fail because they take broken, inefficient, inconsistent process and just digitize them. you end up executing chaos first. So you need to do a brutally honest audit on your ecosystem. And instead of looking just at the vendor's demo, the reality is you need to map your real process. Don't map the documented process, but map what actually people do. Where are the workarounds? Do they have any post-it where they put something on it? And where do people run manual spreadsheet? You really need to look at the existing systems and what you have. The second part is simplify. Challenge every step and every customization. Ask, what business outcome does this serve actually? And the third one is standardization. Choose implementation partners who will push back and tell you, no, we don't need this customization. Every customization, you have to know that it's a technical debt because you have to ensure after the future upgrade, you have to maintain it, you need people to maintain that. So it's really important. It's a business transformation. It's not a technology project or finance project. So the approach should be very led from a business lens instead of technical or finance lens. And that would be my one tip to take away for everyone.
Well, look, thank you for delivering that and for all those insights. Gentlemen, both Abdel and Mandali, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. Now it's afternoon. Thank you very much indeed for your time and those insights. It's been absolutely brilliant talking to you.